Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and tonight I bring you Flying Saucers Here and Now with Micchael Russi. Greetings, Michael. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm excited to present to the listeners some information that they should know as UFO enthusiasts or individuals that are interested in phenomena, but will never probably be revealed. And perhaps the first time here, they may be hearing information that they've never been privy to. So I'm glad to be here and glad to share some of this information with the listeners tonight.
And I'm looking forward to hearing it. You're always very well prepared, and you always have lots of useful information for the listener to listen to and absorb and experiment.
Well, thank you. And I'd like to start off with something that I just recently discovered, which was classified and released through the Information Act. A UFO investigator by the name of Ted Phillips managed to get his hands on some of this material. The material was quite extensive. I saw a picture of it, and it came from the FBI when Edgar J. Hoover was leading the way at the time. And here is the classified information. It's still stamped classified, by the way. For years, J. Edgar Hoover had held onto hundreds of pages of UFO files, while claiming that the FBI was under no obligation to explore this phenomena. As a side fact, the White House was asking the FBI to get involved. The White House really, at this point, we're talking about the 1950s, didn't want to be overly involved in exploring this phenomena for a variety of reasons. However, there was a handwritten note by J. Edgar Hoover. Ted Maccabee, as well as Ted Phillips, acquired massive amounts of paperwork under the Freedom of Information Act. With it came a handwritten note by J. Edgar Hoover, stamped classified, and here's what the note said. He said, "I would do it, but last time the Army would not let us examine the crashed vehicle. This was in response to the government request that the FBI should take responsibility to investigate UFOs." So here's another piece of very solid evidence that a government agency was admitting that crashed vehicles of extraterrestrial origin were very real, but he did not want to get involved, in this case because of internal conflict between one federal agency and the White House itself. So I wanted to share that as a special report this evening, and just more evidence that there was a cover-up for multiple reasons. Our government itself, obviously, did not know what they wanted to do with this phenomena. So I wanted to start off with that. I think every citizen interested in what's happening with this situation as it unfolds needs to know these things, that we're dealing with over 70 years of deliberate cover-up by virtually every federal agency. That's something to think about, especially in light of everything that's happening now with our nation. And it will continue, I'm afraid, in the future, regardless of what political party is leading the way. But anyway, I thought that was very interesting.
I think that's very interesting too, and I can't wait to hear about the information that you've gathered to support the thesis.
Well, another aspect I think is vital for every citizen who's pondering, questioning, well, what are we looking at here? You know, what are UFOs all about? What is this? What is the foundation of this mystery? So I'm looking at some of the great modern age 20th century explorers, investigators who sacrificed their lives, literally sacrificed their lives and the quality of their lives to explore the phenomena. And the UFO exploration today that's emerging had its start really in the 1940s, along with the modern waves of sightings. Notable figures were, and there's so many of them, and you may, I'm sure, remember some of them. Ray Palmer, if you remember Ray Palmer, who was also for a while the editor of Fate magazine. Kenneth Arnold during his time in his famous sighting. Then we had an individual who literally gave up the tranquility of whatever he may have experienced in his life, a gentleman by the name of Charles Fort. Do you remember Charles Fort? Okay. And
Society of New York under the leadership of John Keel. So yeah, I'm very familiar with the Forteans.
yes, the Fortean organization, which wasn't actually started by Charles Fort, but one of his associates, but whose work in many ways laid the foundation for the extraterrestrial theory, as long as other phenomena that he was exploring. And this was during the time where the Air Force had just launched their first project, Project Sign, which was, of course, in the beginning, their responsibility was to explore the UFO phenomena. But Charles Fort was a very interesting character, as it turns out. He was exploring mysteries that were operating in the early 20th century, long before the modern UFO craze. And his research cataloged thousands of anomalous aerial phenomena. His work discovered the idea that extraterrestrial activity was regularly being ignored throughout the nation or dismissed by mainstream science. The word Fortean, as you know, comes from the work of Charles Fort, which he started out as simply an American writer. His topics were a variety of things, and researcher. He devoted his life to the study of anomalies and strange occurrences, from ghosts to strange flying airships to spontaneous human combustion, and many paranormal investigations. Since his time, there have been influenced by his complete dedication to the exploring the unknown. His premier work was entitled The Book of the Damned, which I have never read, nor have I owned, but I understand it includes hundreds of interesting explorations into paranormal phenomena. So that's a name you're not going to hear too much about in this modern age we live in. But Charles Fort, right till his old age, dedicated his entire life to the exploration of the unknown. So I'd like to just honor him this evening as one, and again, he gave up his life's reputation and everything to be exclusively dedicated to exploring the unknown. So I think I needed to mention him this evening.
Yes, I used to have all his books. He wrote several books, there were at least two. And they were collections of all sorts of anomalous events that took place, like manna falling from the heavens, to objects falling from the heavens. It had a lot of different things that he described, and it was very interesting how he tried to tie them together with theories.
Absolutely. I mean, and when you consider, again, the interesting aspect to me, because of all of the ridicule that was involved during those decades for those who were interested in exploring unknown phenomena, to dedicate your entire life, put your reputation on the line, as many of these early investigators did, was quite courageous, I think, and quite amazing. And the second individual that I'd like to honor tonight, that most people should know about, was Major Donald Kehoe.
Yes.
He was an American Marine corporate aviator in the 1950s who became a UFO researcher and writer, arguing that the U.S. government should conduct research and release what it knows about UFOs. Do you remember him?
Yes, of course I remember him. I had his books very prominently displayed on my suitcase when I was not suitcase, bookcase when I was a teenager.
Right. And he was certainly a prominent figure. And here's a man that he had even more to sacrifice in terms of his personal life because he was a military man, very honored in some quarters, had a pristine reputation as a server in the military. He wrote an article about flying saucers being real originally. It originally started for him with True magazine in the 1950s, and that article caused a mild sensation. Now I'm going to stop for a minute to once again honor the editors and publishers of True magazine and Argosy, its companion magazine. I don't know if they were the source of the same publisher, but these two magazines never hesitated to publish articles on Bigfoot, on the abominable snowman, on UFOs consistently, month after month after month. They really laid the groundwork for what we're finally experiencing today. But these early investigators, again, publishers and otherwise, look at the sacrifices they made in terms of their own personal and business lives. So capitalizing on the interest, Kehoe expanded the article into a book, The Flying Saucers Are Real, which was published in 1950. It sold 500,000 copies in paperback. He said back then that the Air Force knew that UFOs were extraterrestrial, but were afraid to release any information that might cause a panic. The truth is that was maybe the first he was the first UFO whistleblower, and the fact that he was a member of the military made it even more profound. He did a full interview. I saw this interview, by the way, on the Mike Wallace show at the time, an entire hour with Mike Wallace, and his courage to speak out on UFOs as he did during a decade when most were ridiculed and laughed at cannot be overemphasized. Can you imagine? And I saw him on multiple programs as a youngster, multiple programs as a youngster, putting your entire reputation, life on the line at that time when ridicule was rampant. As a military man, to stand up and say, something is not right here. The public is not being told everything. And that the evidence that he saw as an air pilot convinced him that the UFOs were an unknown phenomena and needed to be explored. I think that was incredible, an incredible sacrifice made by this man.
I think so too. That was a remarkable risk that he took, but he took it.
He certainly did. And he moved further, where in 1956, he founded NICAP, which was the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena. This was, at the time, the largest and most influential civil research organization during the 50s and 60s. Under Kehoe's leadership, NICAP pressed aggressively for congressional hearings and accused the military of maintaining a UFO cover-up. Unbelievable at that time, simply unbelievable. Based on, you lived through the 50s, you lived through the early, middle, and late 60s, where you were still laughed at, myself included, by the way, for having a mainstream dominant interest convinced that this phenomenon was very real. And when I had my organization at the time, the same was true. We were laughed at, ridiculed by our contemporaries over that this subject would even be of any prominent concern amongst us. So, I mean, you can imagine what those decades were like for anyone exploring this phenomenon, that era. And let me ask you, during your time growing up in this country and your interest in mythology and theology and everything else, did you confront this or were you mainly, you know, you were surrounded by your own associates who felt as you did? Was the impact as great on you as it was, frankly, on me when I was a youth and some others? What did you experience during your time as an investigator and a torchbearer, if you will?
As a child, I read whatever books were out. As soon as I could read, I developed an interest in UFOs. And again, back there, the belief, although it was ridiculed, was that these were vehicles from outer space, from other planets mostly. I also came in contact with the contactee literature, that the aliens were human in appearance, and that they communicated with humanity. They had a spiritual and specific message to share with humanity. And I remember as a kid, I used to try to signal UFOs with a little mirror. They'd sit on the hill outside of the apartment and like send signals to the sky, hoping a UFO would find my signals and I guess come down. Later on, when I became older in high school, I was the chief transmedium for a metaphysical group in New York City. And some of the channeled entities claimed to be from other planets. And that's when I started investigating the more spiritual dimensions of the phenomenon. And again, I didn't know exactly what to make of it. I liked science fiction like Star Trek and so forth. And I thought of it in those terms on one level. And on another level, I realized that there's more universes than possible. And I had already been studying ufology my entire life and saw the parallels between the figures in the UFO phenomenon and the myths. And Von Daniken, as we spoke with before, when he came out, he gave that whole ancient gods or space aliens perspective, that lens that redefined everything to some extent. But no one I could think of ridiculed me for believing what I believed, because I was raised in the culture that valued mythology and all sorts of religions, miracles, and so forth. And the culture here was very accepting of outer space. So even though it wasn't correct topic, I didn't feel impacted by other people's unbelief or even society's unbelief as a whole. I learned not to talk about it, like I learned how to talk, not to talk about very many other topics to a society that didn't accept them as real. And I just kept quiet about it, and my interest was providing within myself and other friends who were into it, and we talk amongst ourselves and speculate.
Now, where did you go to school? I'm curious. I mean, was this during a time where where were you living at the time?
I was living in the Bronx as a child, and then Washington Heights in the tip of Manhattan. And school, first public school in the Bronx, and then to a parochial school in, again, Washington Heights. And I went to, and then I went to Bronx High School of Science. And I was there for 4 years, and then I didn't continue my education right away. I was hoping to get into the psychic field, to be a lecturer, investigator, and so on and so forth. Eventually, that proved impractical economically. So I continued, and I started seeking employment. And I started working when I was 11 years old. So I had a steady.
Amazing.
I had a beard when I was 11 too. When I was 11, I shot up in size. I grew a beard. I didn't look like any of the other kids. It was much bigger.
So during this time, as your interest in the unknown and theurgy and UFOs and whatever, did you discuss any of this with your average associates, whether it be in high school or people you worked with? I mean, I'm very interested to know if you experienced the same level of ridicule and dismissiveness that I did when I went to middle school, high school. We began our own UFO organization, my brother and I, which amazingly did begin to draw many of our fellow students, which I did not think would happen, frankly, but we also experienced a lot of ridicule. So was any of this a factor as you progressed through your youth and your adulthood? Did any of this come into, or did you more or less keep these conversations on a mainstream level to yourself? I mean, I'm just curious, knowing human nature the way I have learned it. Did you experience any of this or that, of anything like that during these decades?
There were people who were fearful of the unknown, whether it's psychic or otherworldly. So I learned to respect their fear and their ridicule. I didn't have to believe what they're telling me, because my own experiences pointed in the direction of the reality of these phenomena. And because of my wide range of similar reading across culture, that's what it was a universal human phenomenon. So again, even though I ridicule it, it was still, they had television shows that dealt with the topics. So that's because society accepted as fiction and fine. You know, I just would explain how I liked science fiction and horror and things like that, or modern day folklore, which I still believe a lot of folklore. And Charles Ballet has written books, actually several books, beginning with the something from Gonia. I don't remember the full title. Passage to Magonia, Visit to Magonia, but where he showed the correspondence and similarities between European folklore and UFO alien accounts. So again, I was aware.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, Passport to Magonia. That's a useful. And
I've never read that. Was that the main topic of that book?
Yeah, the main topic of the book was showing how the phenomenon of elves and fairies and things like that have a lot in common with the UFO phenomenon, especially the area where people are kidnapped and reproductive stuff is done with them, and then they're released, losses in memory, or with the loss of time that can't be explained. So all that is fairy literature. And he pointed out the similarities very dramatically and very effectively. And that opened my eyes to my area of exploration as well.
Well, I would say that's probably very familiar to what Eric von Däniken had done in terms of ancient mysteries as well. Yes, I did not know. I've never read that book, but I think I'm going to have to get to it because it sounds fascinating.
It is fascinating, and like von Däniken showed the similarities between myths and what was emerging then is a new understanding of the UFO phenomenon and associated alien abductions and so forth. Vallée approached the same topic from another angle and came to a lot of the same conclusions. So he too didn't commit to the reality of these things, only to the validity of the experience, which seemed to be universal and seemed to transcend the culture we found ourselves in. And he started people similarities, like there's a lot of similarity between angels and UFO phenomenon as well. And that opened up the door to my area of expertise, which is mythology. So these books became another way of studying mythology, which I already loved. And and I don't know how true the accounts were ultimately, but they're a fascinating way of looking at the myths and getting a new understanding that we didn't get from the other ways.
Right, absolutely. And I can see the levels of expanded consciousness there through the research of these individuals, which is absolutely fascinating. And that's why these early researchers were so imperative in the overall scope of what we're hearing about now, which, I have very mixed feelings about what's going on at the present time. I'd like to hear your opinion about it. Yes, we're seeing some fascinating footage, which has existed all along, hundreds and hundreds of films and videos demonstrating unknown phenomena. But this is, in my opinion, the coward's way out. Because once again, this government is making no commitment. We're talking about congressional investigations and hearings with witnesses, both connected with the military, individual researchers, and otherwise, but there's no official announcement, all except to say, well, we don't know what they are. Well, I think you have an obligation after 70 years to go a little bit beyond that. So to me, I think it's egregious what they're doing. I'm happy, but as a long-time researcher and investigator, I'm not thrilled by the position that this government has finally taken, because there's a lot here, including missing people. And in our last segment, I explained about 2 pilots. One, supposedly his body was found. The other one, I believe a pilot from New Zealand, as I recall the case, was never found, chasing a UFO, what clearly was a UFO at the time. So, we have, and who knows what else we don't know in terms of missing people, missing times, alleged portals being seen, that if these events can be validated, and there's pretty strong evidence, especially when it comes to the Mantell case and the New Zealand pilot whose parents endlessly tried to get some information on what happened to their son. What happened to our son was never answered. There is no answer to these cases. So in spite of all of that, and again, God only knows what we don't know in this area, it's egregious to me that, yes, thank you for releasing all of this hidden footage. But as usual, as so often with government officials, there's been no official position. Yes, there has been a cover-up amongst some of government agencies. We do apologize to the American public. Let us continue to reveal what we know. That's what should be said, and that's what's not being said. So, from my opinion, it's a disappointment overall.
I was disappointed as well. I didn't watch every single minute of the proceedings, but I caught bits and pieces of it here and there as it progressed. But I remember my reaction to the photographs and the moving images it had, because I've seen this before, not exact footage, stuff that was similar to it over the years. I wasn't seeing anything that I hadn't seen before. And also the explanation, when they touched upon the other dimensional theories and the ultra-terrestrial theories and also theories, again, without coming to any conclusion. What it did was what other countries seem to have done when they disclosed, earlier than we disclosed, is again, there's something there. We don't know what it is, but it doesn't seem to mean us any great ill. And we don't know what it is, but since it's leaving us alone, we'll leave it alone. That's the kind of idea I had. And I didn't think it answered it either. It was, again, these images were out there, the accounts were out there, no new top secret information was divulged. There's all sorts of aspects of the UFO enigma that do fall within governmental areas of exploration and war gathering, and they weren't, the doors weren't open to those things. So I don't know. This will take it for what it is, and it's a baby step to move forward, and we'll see what happens in the future. And people should keep pushing. It could be transparency, or if
you're
side disclose, we have disclose. Maybe we could run the truth indirectly.
Well, you're absolutely correct when you say a baby step. It's definitely a baby step. I will give the president credit for acknowledging that he has acknowledged publicly this is a mystery and we don't know what they are. In all honesty, in all fairness, I have to give the president full credit for this and then supporting, at least it appears to be, congressional investigations. I have to give credit where credit is due. Thank you, Mr. President, for this, if nothing else. But I digress. So,
and the proceedings that I watched, they were very bipartisan. Both parties seemed to be focused on the topic and not on the internal battle which is taking place at all of the parts. They're all friendly, they're all civil, and they're all focused on the UAP now phenomenon in the proceedings.
We have to grab the positive where we can get it, right?
Oh, certainly so. The positive is always good.
I'd like to share a little bit more information, if I can, on the extraordinary sacrifice that Major Donald Kehoe had made. As he continued his passionate investigation into the UFO phenomena, during his peak, he formed NICAP, the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena, which boasted a membership of around 15,000 at the time. The group operated as a centralized, highly structured network, publishing a widely read periodical known as the UFO Investigator. Sometimes I would love to go on the internet and see if I can order some back copies of these issues, but I know if I started doing that, I'd have a pile of material here right now, which may not be the best thing at this point in my life, but the temptation is always there. But I digress. NICAP Board of Directors was composed of respected retired military experts, scientists, and aviation experts, giving it top credibility that other flying saucer groups of that time lacked. Now, the other major group at that time, by the way, was the APRO, which was founded by a married couple you're probably familiar with, Jim and Corinne Lorenzen. I give them credit. They did what they could also to put forth all of the evidence concerning the UFO phenomena. And their organization, they differed at all from NICAP, is that they believed in the close encounter of the third kind, which means they believed in credibility of face-to-face contact with alien visitors. NICAP was skeptical in that area. They needed a little more proof. But I just thought I'd add that because I do tip my hat also to the APRO, which I think operated out of the South, mostly Arizona, Texas, and the like. But they also devoted their lives to the phenomena. They are to be commended. Following a massive wave of highly publicized UFO sightings in 1966, NICAP's influence led to the formation of the Condon Committee, and I'm sure we all remember that, at the University of Colorado to investigate the phenomenon. At first, NICAP supported the Condon group until Kehoe discovered a secret memo that instructed the Condon group to debunk UFOs before they even began their research. That memo came from the Air Force itself. So we know now that the Condon report, which was quite extensive, added up to nothing. And most of the UFO investigators at the time were disappointed in the results. Do you remember that situation?
Yes, I remember that. And Blue Book, too, started off as another debunking project, but then the director, Hynek, changed his position dramatically, and that went in another direction.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And we're going to get into that in a few moments, by the way, which is very interesting. Let me continue. NICAP eventually dissolved because of financial reasons and other pressures. They had no choice, but they were the most influential private UFO organization at the time. Major Kehoe was widely regarded as the leading figure in UFOlogy at that time, putting his entire life up for ridicule. both as a military man and as a personal citizen, and assault on his reputation as a member of the military. So I would like to honor this evening, and for all those who are listening, who are UFO advocates, who believe the mystery is real, to research and remember these brave pioneers during the 50s and 60s who put their entire lives on the line for honest investigation concerning the UFO enigma. And so that's why it's so important to me that these individuals be remembered.
Well, certainly so. And since you brought up Fort today, Fort is on my short list for the heroic Hall of Fame that we have of fellow torchbearers. We do certainly a torchbearer.
Mm-hmm. Well, I couldn't agree with you more. I'd like to bring up something else now. I just heard this report today, which absolutely amazed me. But are you familiar with the UFO explorer, Dr. Stephen Greer, at the present time?
Disclosure Network.
Pardon me?
He started the Disclosure Network. The Disclosure Network
Yes.
in New York has a show on my channel.
Oh, okay, very good. Well, I like to cover some information with him as I can, and something that was just released today, which I was unfamiliar with. Dr. Stephen Greer is an American UFOologist, founder of the Center for the Study of UFO Intelligence and the Disclosure Project. There is the good and bad in all religions, he recently said. He had a number of near-death experiences well as a child, which made him aware that there is a universal consciousness which we are all connected to, including extraterrestrials. I agree with that completely. Just like I am a supporter of New Thought concepts, which believes there is one source, there is a universal intelligence out there that somehow we are all expressions of, notwithstanding whatever specific spiritual concept or denomination we may have aligned ourselves to. So I agree with him completely on that. He was trained in transcendental meditation and served as a director of a meditation organization in the 1970s. His UFO organization claims to have over 3,000 confirmed reports of UFO sightings by pilots and over 4,000 of what they described as landing cases. The landing cases, by the way, especially during the 60s, the photographic evidence always fascinates me. When you see some of the scorched earth and evidence that was left clearly by phenomena we know nothing of, from Australia to England to the United States, it's really quite amazing. And I love looking at these photographs because, first of all the evidence points to that they are real. And I see farmers standing in the middle of scorched earth and round circles and cannot possibly be explained. And they're just looking at what they clearly don't understand themselves, which materialized on their farms, on their property, whichever the case might be. But I love looking at these photos because this early evidence still excites me, because it's just the foreground of evidently we're now being told today, the forerunner, if you will. His UFO organization claims to have 3,000 confirmed reports of UFO sightings by pilots. He claims he had 2 UFO experiences himself as a youngster that led him to the realization that there is indeed a universal consciousness that lives within us. And that's where he acquired is not only his obviously authentication in his mind that the UFO phenomenon is real, but also some of his spiritual concepts. He also believes very strongly that while there is good and bad in denominational spiritual beliefs, but that overall the belief of universal consciousness, the one source, that this is a mental universe, has been tainted by religions as we know them on every kind. Of every kind. He also believes that in multidimensional existence, which I do as well, and that God is real, but is an unbound source of consciousness at its source, and that it is one great creative being that is within us as also without. This reality has been severely tainted as we know it. Now, he recently discovered a statement, which is incredible, but I'll get to it, by J.D. Vance, our vice president. He recently stated, as he was speaking to a group of evangelicals, and he believes that if UFOs do exist, and there is evidence to believe that they do, he believes that they are demons. They are demonic. And that life on other planets is a highly demonic as well, and of a demonic nature. Now, I had to hang on to the arms of my chair and take a Xanax when I heard this. I mean, there's a few people that live in my building who go to evangelical churches, as an example, who also believe this. And I had one say to me, Mike, the evidence is there. Yes, they do exist. UFOs do exist. I just watched the documentary by a named pastor but they are demonic. Do you have any opinion on this viewpoint? I certainly, yes.
Follow the theory that the UFO beings are angels, and we described in angelology. Of course, we know von Daniken, sort of they were the gods of old, the shining ones, the gods of mythology. Yes, there are some people claim they're demonic. A lot of it comes from comparing biblical and pre-biblical information about beings and applying it to current evangelical understandings of Christianity and of the Old Testament. Because, as we discussed before, in ancient Greek, the word daemon means an in-between creature. So angel, messenger. So all angels were demons, which means they were in-between creatures. They weren't creatures of the earth. They were between earth and heaven. And those were the agathi demons, the good or the innocent demones. And then the kako demons, which means bad in-between creature, are the ones that meant humanity ill. But the beliefs of the ancients were very different than our beliefs now.
Right.
According to that theory, I don't lend it credence because I don't believe we live in a evil universe. I believe despite all the darkness and the shadows, there's still light and a lot of really wonderful things here. So I believe that we're alone in the drop of light in the sea of darkness.
I agree with you 100% on that. I think we all have the divine spark within us. I think, but we also have the capacity living in this dimension to go in different directions as far as our integrity, our character, and whatever concepts of this life we may adhere to. So there always the possibility of going in a dark direction. But I don't believe for 1 minute that the trillions of planets that exist out there are all inhabited by demonic forces. That is, to say that's childlike thinking, I think would understate what's happening in that area. But again, the problem is we have a national leader in the midst of a governmental UFO investigation, mind you, in the midst of it, making what I consider to be a ridiculous statement like this. There are no demons out there in the trillions of galaxies and planets that we know exist. There are other races, there are other forces, there are other, I believe, human beings, if you will, living beings. So that would make the most sense to me. So we have no evidence really, in spite of past mythology, that demons or hell as we know it really does exist. It existed in Greek mythology, it existed in Christianity, it existed in evangelical beliefs. But I think that statement from the vice president at a time when UFOs are finally being taken seriously is really not doing the service to the investigation supposedly, and the disclosure that we're not involved in. So I had just to bring that up and bring it to the forefront of our listeners. Some may have heard about it already, but I heard about this just today from Stephen Greer, as a matter of fact, and I couldn't believe my ears. But we are where we are. And I'd like to mention, yes.
Yeah, I was wondering when I heard that statement. I've seen recordings of it. What was the purpose? What purpose could it possibly serve to make a statement like that?
Absolutely, and you put it very well. Instead of moving the disclosure environment that we're now engaged in forward, well, now you're moving it backwards into a childlike consciousness, if you will. And I believe that, and I'm going to make some statements as I see it, in the same category as Adam and Eve and Satan, as Christians believe, which is pure absurdity, but it moves it back into that category of pure childlike fantasy, which I believe it is. But I digress in some levels there. But again, it didn't do the disclosure movement any good by making a statement like that. So, and there are other things, but we won't go into that. But the next investigator that I definitely want to mention, because of the pattern of his life and what he did contribute, and that was Dr. J. Allen Hynek, professor of astronomer, UFOologist. He acted as an advisor to the Air Force under 3 projects: Project Sign, Project Grudge, and Project Blue Book. In later years, he created his own UFO research developing code, if you will, and was responsible for his close encounter classification system. Hynek went from skeptic to believer, and he became very critical of the Air Force and his various projects, which seemed to only exist to debunk case after case of UFOs rather than seriously, scientifically investigated them. And I think Dr. Hynek, to his credit, became disenchanted with this because he noticed that these organizations, Blue Book being the last one, really was not serious about investigating the specifics of UFO incidents. They already had a preconceived agenda, if you will, to simply debunk them more times than not. And of course, he developed, as most serious investigators like yourself know, of the 3 classifications, which the first kind was the sightings of UFO, highly detailed, with no physical interaction with the environment. A close encounter of the second kind was encounters where the UFO left physical evidence, such as scorched earth, crop circles, and witnesses to landings. The third kind, of course, as we know, were direct observation with animated entities or captures associated with UFOs. So he was a major contributor in bringing some stability and scientific viewpoints to the UFO phenomena. But and I credit him with making the turnaround that he did, and I remember this very vividly. he was also, before he became a believer, drew worldwide ridicule when he claimed that the Michigan UFO mass sightings of 1966, which are still extraordinary until this day, were the result of swamp gas.
Yes,
He later, do you remember that?
during the swamp gas, the mass hysteria, and the planet, all the pilots were chasing the planet Venus.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And later he changed his position on UFOs and considered himself a serious investigator. Now, the thing with the swamp gas incident was that in spite of the fact, with a policeman had drew a very vivid picture of what he saw, and that artistic description I find still impressive till today. It was a saucer-shaped object with like a screen, and this has been described before, with a screen effect along its side, a dome on top, landing gear, and two aerial objects on the top of it. This was drawn by a policeman. On top of that, they had, I believe, 2 nights of students at the nearby college viewing these objects because they were visiting for 2 consecutive nights. And you had citizens that had seen lights in the sky advancing towards this specific area. It was a mass sighting. So I have to credit Dr. Hynek in terms of overcoming that ridicule, which was literally world renowned, and becoming a serious scientific UFO investigator at the end. So I have to credit him for that, and he became a asset in terms of the UFO phenomenon. And I think he should be remembered as a scientific thinker and individual, which I think is to his credit. He wanted science to be involved. He wanted science to be involved, and he felt that all 3 UFO organizations, Project Sign, Project Grudge, and Project Blue Book, were not taking this phenomenon seriously. So I'd like to honor him today as well, and I hope that every UFO enthusiast and paranormal investigator listening to this program will do their own research and honor these pioneers, torchbearers of the past, because they should not be forgotten by any means. And there's so many more that we will discuss in future programs. But I think these 3, including Stephen Greer presently, should be acknowledged and honored.
I believe so as well. And we started the process in a Hall of Heroes, where so far we have Madame Blavatsky, we have Tim Beckley,
Mm-hmm.
we have Brad Steiger, and we have Tom Donegan, and Edgar Casey, and Charles Fort are going to be the next 2 who make their way to the Age of Heroes and the Hall of Heroes.
Well, that's going to be exciting, and I certainly don't want to miss that. And I'm.
Hi, Joe. And also, I've been interviewing torchbearers individually for show. So I'd like to invite you to one of those. We'll do it on the Age of Heroes channel. What do you call it? I guess where you can tell your story in more detail.
Well, thank you so much, and it's exciting for me to have you taking the initiative to bring these courageous investigators, which certainly opened up the pathways of our consciousness to what's really been happening in terms of these phenomena. So I'm very excited to hear that.
Yeah, they should be acknowledged for opening doors to new ways of looking at things and experiencing the reality that we live in. Ones that are very productive on a variety of levels. And even if their thesis isn't correct, the journey that they took provides a lot of other insights and much useful information. and they should be honored, they should be remembered, and we should remember them. And the people that have taken the torch from them, they continue on to this day, investigating the paranormal and the unexplained, and sharing their experiences on podcasts, through magazine articles, through books, through public talks. They should also be acknowledged for doing that work. And that's why we started the torchbearers aspect of what we're doing.
Well, I'm certainly excited about it, and everyone should involve themselves and make themselves available to the information that the pathways that you have opened up to us are providing, because it's we don't know how many others have this information available to them around the nation, but they need to know these names. They need to know these individuals that they devoted their entire lives to the paranormal, to the unexplained, to events that third dimension physics and science as we know it cannot explain. And that's what this is all about. That's what this is all about. And isn't it amazing that what you and I are discussing now, that was indeed ridiculed, laughed at, and hidden from us during the 50s and 60s, that these possibilities are now very much being considered by many in mainstream society who stopped to give it some thought, even in terms of multidimensional existences and portals and what may lie beyond. I personally believe, from a spiritual standpoint, that Jesus the Christ was real, and he came here not to, quote unquote, forgive us of our sins. I don't believe that for a minute, but came here to explain to us another level of consciousness, along with Eastern thought did that as well. And he gave his life for this, and basically nothing else. And also to show us that we too had powers that live within us that go beyond what third dimensional beliefs have been teaching us, that we have an energetic force that can be impressed and manipulated through our intentions, our beliefs, and our faith to accomplish what we thought we could never accomplish in our lives. That energy is a real factor in our lives, and can be impressed upon by our thoughts and our words. I think of everything else. Jesus taught incessantly about this, but it was never magnified either by our traditional denominational religions as we know it, or by our schools or science classes. Your science class never taught you, unless I'm wrong, that within the air that surrounds us, the air that surrounds you at this present time, are trillions of atomic particles just waiting to be impressed by something. What proves this? Well, quantum physics has validated this. So what are the implications of this? As Dr. Deepak Chopra said many years ago, there is a field out there of all possibilities. If we thought like this every day, and most of the times, let's face it, we don't, because we're consumed with the challenges of our present lives, who knows what we can develop and accomplish in our lives in terms of helping others as well as helping ourselves.
The unlimited potential and endless possibilities in the Greek mythic materials called chaos, is said in English. And by the Gnostics, it was known as the pleroma.
Absolutely. So I think
one.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And we're going to be devoting lots of shows to that in the future.
I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to that very much.
I announced one of the shows already. It's going to be called Otherworld Adventures. And I used to have years ago with my wife, we had a radio show called Otherworld Adventures, Barbarians in Space. We dealt with these same topics, but more of a playful, interactive storytelling way.
Hmm.
We're going to do that a little bit more now too. But these are topics that are important. You know, why are we here? What are we doing here? Where are we going when we're not here? What else is there?
Yes.
Does have any meaning?
Yes.
We create our meaning,
Yes.
meaningless, and we're going to be exploring all of those questions. So I'll invite you to those talks as well, and I look forward to your input. One of the things I have to add is that lately I've been leaning toward a neo-theosophical framework for the things I'm doing, and not that everything in theosophy is something I like or that I believe in, but in neo-theosophy,
Hmm.
which grew in this country primarily, all the gods of old and all the religious figures throughout history are working together to help humanity
Hmm.
and to learn through human experience. And the human experience is a school, not a prison, not a torture chamber, but a school where we learn how to create in a divine manner and embody and express the divine essence that is who we are. So I like that. And I would much rather operate from there than through a more uh, cultural, ethnic spirituality. Even though everyone knows I love the Olympian and I do a lot of things with the Olympian material, but something more universal. Because I feel right now the divisions are getting us in trouble more so than they ever did, and they always have brought us to trouble. So if we can think
Absolutely.
if we could treasure who we are, where we came from, and what we learned from it, and what we contributed to the world by being part of that journey, that's fine. But attack each other and kill each other and hate each other, no, it's not fun.
Absolutely. And everything you've said leads to one source, in my opinion, and that is unity consciousness. And that we have the ability to at least conceive and perhaps experience other dimensional existences beyond our own. Because more and more are beginning to accept the possibility that these other worlds, in many ways, are right here amongst us, only on a different vibrational level. And the afterlife is a very thin curtain between this existence and the next. That's not to say, of course, what may exist trillions of galaxies beyond this, but we know that vibration, thought, and words can open up pathways that we've never been taught actually exist in traditional religious denominations. I'm speaking specifically from my experience in Christian denominations specifically. Most of the times, if you talk like this, you would be out the front door on your backside, quote unquote. But
Well,
that's just the reality.
that is unfortunately the reality in a lot of places, but we won't be doing that here. And unfortunately, our conversation comes to a close for today. Thank you, Michael.
Hmm.
Awesome, and I always enjoy exchanging ideas with you. You've given me a lot to think about. And how can people find you and enter your world?
Well, the main thing is right now I'm a light worker. I'm an energy worker. I take it very seriously. I believe that energy is bilocal, and I believe in intercessory healing. I believe in spiritual energy, which is also scientific. I believe all forces in this world, the most powerful forces, are invisible, and we have the ability to access them. So they can write to me with their prayer work at 135 Hazel Street, apartment 7E, uh, Clifton, New Jersey, 07011. I'll write them back. I will do light work and energy work and put them on my vast list. They can also DM me if they want with any prayer energy work they would like to have done, and I will engage in that. There is no cost, there is no price, and I will work with them.
Thank you very much. That is an awesome thing you're offering, and I'm glad that you're actively engaged in your ministry. And I'm glad to be part of your adventure as well. And I look forward to our next conversation. Be well, my friend.
Thank you for all of the opportunities you offer us. We are so thrilled. Thank you.
My pleasure. Take care, Michael.
Have a good night, everyone.